Hey guys, Alchemist here. So I hope you've all had a great week and welcome to episode 7 of the weekendly forecast and outlook. I hope you've been finding value in these videos, and as an extra value, there will also actually be another video uploaded later today on YouTube, which will be a whole trade breakdown, starting all the way from the weekly down to the 1 minute, showing how you can actually execute on these trades, as well as just a quick preview as to what one of the many flowcharts all the members in the course have received. So if you're new to this channel, please do like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure to turn on the notification bells as well so that you don't miss any future uploads. Only do so if after watching this video and the next video, you've taken some sort of value away from this. If you haven't, that's completely fine. You can please continue on and don't subscribe to my channel. However, if you have just taken even just one little bit of value out of this, please do subscribe, as it does help out the channel quite a bit. And if you are new to this channel, on this channel, I'll be posting a weekendly outlook each weekend, as well as I will actually starting to post an extra video every now and then too, which will be sort of trade breakdowns, as well as some more educational content as to what market structure is, how to look for liquidity, what is order flow, and everything else that's included as well. So let's get into today's video. So unfortunately for AU, I've actually wiped the chart that I did last week for the outlook, so I can't compare exactly as to what it was. However, I have just gone back and had a look. And what I had identified was not that. I thought it would be posting. We were here last weekend. So this here is the close of Saturday, and this was the opening of this weekend's trades. What I had identified to what I thought would happen was that this low would be swept, and that would be coming back up into this 4-hour supply here, which would have either set a new low, or the other option, having looked at my last weekend's outlook, was that after tapping into this supply, we actually sweep the high here before then going down. Now we can see that that was wrong. So what happened here was we did get a reaction from this supply. On the 15 minute, there was a trade to take in here. And then we did actually sweep above. And once we swept, okay, here is that sweep here. We did come all the way back down into these buy to sell wicks. And then we did see a lot of bullish momentum enter the market, which has now created a whole new 4-hour boss. So half of it was right, the other half was wrong. Let's wipe all of this and let's go out to the weekly and let's actually have a look exactly where we are, and let's frame up this weekend's outlook. So starting off on the weekly, we need to identify two things: the current demand and supply zone that we're trading within. So our supply zone here are these buy to sell wicks above. And in terms of demand, what we can do is we can just come here and drop a horizontal line. And we can see that we're actually tagged into this POI here, which, as I stated in last week's video, I had actually identified back in January this year that we would be arriving at this point. If you haven't watched that, I will also post a link to it in this video above. So this here is our weekly demand, and this is our weekly supply. On the weekly time frame, that's all we need to do. And now we can jump down to the daily. In terms of the daily, well, our daily boss was from here to here. Again, if you guys haven't watched my market structure video as to how to be marking out your bosses, the highs and lows, I will be posting a link to it in the top right hand corner. So please do go ahead and watch that. And if you do have any questions, please let me know. So that's the daily boss. This is our daily high. And our daily low is here. So now we've identified our weekly supply and demand zones, as well as our daily range, boss, high and low. On the daily, that's all that we need to do. We're not marking any POIs on the daily. We jump down to the 4-hour, and that's where we can start marking some POIs. So at the time, sorry, I just need to clean these up. At the time, the 4-hour boss was actually down here. So from this low here, once we had this candle close, this was our 4-hour boss at the time. And therefore the 4-hour high was just the highest point above here. You can see we wicked it above here, and then we wicked it again. And then we here actually had a candle close. So once this candle closed above, it was no longer our 4-hour high. It was our new 4-hour boss. Once that became our 4-hour boss, we delete the previous line that was the 4-hour boss line there. And then we identify our 4-hour low. And the 4-hour low is just going to be the lowest point below this line. So it's obviously going to be here, which is the daily low. So we can just rename this daily plus 4H low. And then instead of pressing cancel, we can press enter next time. So we'll come back in, daily plus 4H. and then we'll click OK. With our 4-hour high, we can't identify that yet as we haven't yet had a bearish pullback to confirm that we've set the high. We can see we're actually tapping into this very nice POI here. So this could potentially be where price will reject for a little bit and allow us to have our 4-hour high, but we're not 100% sure yet. So let's dissect this piece of price action here, and let's identify some higher zones we could also be seeing price reject from. In terms of this here, we can always be marking out the extreme. Okay, the extreme is always going to be valid. You can see there is a very, very small amount of this week here that also wasn't mitigated. So it's up to you. You can also be marking that out like that. And you need to zoom out a bit. There we go. So we have that. We have this zone here. And then let's have a look as to, in this piece of price action here, where we've had some interaction and where we've actually seen supply take over demand. So to do so, let's identify our demand first. So this here was that demand. Okay, we can see it got tagged a couple of times before it actually failed. When it got tagged here, you can see it created a sort of demand chain. When this week he came and set a new higher high above these highs here. And let's now see for places of interaction. So whilst we have this zone here, before that zone was created, we had this supply zone, which has also actually swept the liquidity above the previous two candles. So we can mark that out here as a refined supply. We can show the liquidity sweep there. Okay, and then the next one was mitigated, and then we actually swept the liquidity above this bullish candle. On the 4-hour time frame, there's only one candle there, but if we were to drop down, we would see that there was a liquidity sweep. However, all we need to do now is just know that this here is the next unmitigated zone. We do also have these buy to sell wicks down here. So from this candle, when we actually swept the demand, it wasn't yet a break because we hadn't had a body close below until this candle here. So we can take this one to this one, okay, which we can see was mitigated directly again by the following week. So if we just take this week, which was unmitigated, we can drag that across. And what do we see here? We see that when price interacted with this week, which was the last unmitigated unmitigated supply, we did see interaction. We saw price push up. Price then, this supply zone tried to hold. And how we know is that we have this wick to the downside on the next candle. So that price had actually pushed back down, but that essentially the supply zone failed and demand held because we did push up further and this supply here failed. Okay, so we can mark that here as a supply failed. And we can get rid of that. When we have something like this, we therefore actually create a demand flip zone. So this here is now going to be a valid demand zone. Okay, and let's have a look what else we've got here. So we've got this candle as a demand. And then we can see again, just like when we interacted here, we have some wicks below and above, which signify that interaction, which is very, very important. So this is also going to be a supply zone. And we can see just below, we actually have some inducement in the sense of these equal highs. So therefore that's liquidity to be swept. We have this zone here. We have these buy to sell wicks, but they actually just stopped sort of nowhere in the 4-hour. If we were to jump down to the 15-minute, there'd definitely be something here that caused this interaction where price pushed down, pushed up, and then continued lower. But if we can't see it on this time frame, we just simply won't mark it. So that's all that we need to see in this leg here above the daily boss. Everything below here has now been mitigated. So now we just start from the bottom here and mark some demand zones. I'm just going to make this part here a bit smaller. This is our weekly demand. And so what we can see here is we had this week. As a demand, and then we can take this extreme again. Okay, we can see that that's where this came into, either the buy to sell wicks or the extreme here. And then we can identify this as well as a very nice place to potentially trade from in the future as well. So they're the demand zones 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these are the supply zones above. If we've now had a bullish 4-hour boss, we could be expecting higher prices potentially into one of these zones above. We're actually tapping into a very, very nice zone here. So this zone fulfills all the requirements of a valid POI. If you're a member of the course, you know exactly what those are. If you're not, join and you'll find out. So we'll see if that actually will hold or whether we'll just have a slight reaction to push us back down into this demand zone to potentially be coming further up here. So price may just require a little bit more liquidity, and it may be hunting the liquidity that's above these highs. So we won't exactly know, but some potential setups which could occur could be that we tap into here, and then we can come further back down here. Okay. Or price could just reject from this supply zone, as this was the last real supply zone before the daily break of structure. So this could be the one that pushes us down. We could have a small reaction from here, and then we could be trading lower into this demand zone here. Or price can also come all the way up to one of these zones above. So let's leave these here. I'll make sure that I don't change this chart before next week's weekend outlook so we can see if this was accurate or not. And now let's have a look at EU. So thankfully on EU, I left the chart exactly as it was, probably because I'm not actually trading EU. But let's have a look at how the outlook actually turned out. So what I had identified was that price will be pushing up into here. We would see a slight reaction, and we do actually have that in the sense of these buy to sell wicks. So they're the reaction or interaction, as we just saw previously on AU. And then I was also anticipating that this supply zone here would be swept, okay? And that did in fact occur. Okay, we had this sweep. But where I was wrong is after this sweep, I was anticipating that price would come all the way back down to this 4-hour low, okay, which was not the case. So what happened was we came down into here. We actually swept this low. So we can see that this here was swept just by a pip or two. And that we're now targeting this high here. And if we look at this, if this high's objective was to set a lower low, it's failed in doing so, and therefore it itself becomes a targeted high. So we can see that price should be now attacking this level. And as we identified last week, this high as well could potentially be targeted. And what I said was if this supply zone was to fail, then this high should also fail. And that's actually, this supply zone has now failed because it's failed to set a new lower low. So we could potentially now be seeing more of this sort of outlook. We'll delete this one. This one was very much wrong. So we could see that we could potentially be coming into this supply zone here, having a reaction, and then taking this targeted high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this one here. And now we'll also need to remark out our 4-hour structure because this 4-hour high obviously failed. So once this candle closed above, this 4-hour high became our 4-hour boss. Okay, we delete the previous one. We can remove this range. Okay, the 4-hour low is going to be the lowest point below this boss, which is going to be this line that I've got as a sweep, but I'll have both. So this is going to be the 4-hour low. And the 4-hour high is going to only be confirmed after we've had a significant bearish pullback. Okay, and in this case, we definitely have had that. So I'm just going to make this a bit neater. So this here is going to be that 4-hour high. Therefore, our new 4-hour range is going to be from this low to this high. Now let's identify some POIs within this range. So we have these buy to sell wicks, which was swept here. Then we had a break below. This came into this candle here, this POI. Okay, just tapped it and went. And then in terms of supplies, we have this. I'm going to minimize this down to here. And then we've got this demand. We have the interaction. I will change the color of that, but I'll just keep it gray just to mark this one out here. You can see it was swept, and then after it was swept, price broke straight through it. This here was a demand. This was a supply. This supply was swept. Once it was swept, it gave price the liquidity it needed to push further back down, but price's intention wasn't bearish, it was bullish. So we actually just swept the liquidity resting below this low here as well. So we would have had quite a lot of significant liquidity resting below here. Price tapped into that liquidity pool and pushed straight up higher. And now we're in the extreme of the 4-hour supply. So if the 4-hour was to turn bearish, this is the last point of defense that 4-hour has. However, we've got this labeled here as a targeted high because this high failed in setting a lower low, lower than this low. So ideally, we should see this get traded straight through. So I'll delete this one as well. Some potential scenarios that we could have for this week. So we could either sweep this, have a slight reaction. So there is actually these buy to sell wicks here as well. Mark these out. These will become a demand zone if this supply fails. Up until now, they're not a demand zone. But if we flip this supply, if price breaks above and closes above, these are going to be a nice demand zone to trade from. So if price does close above, we come back down, and if 15-minute order flow is bullish at the time, we could be taking longs potentially from this demand zone. If not, we'd be taking them from this POI here, at least targeting to this supply. Okay, this is sort of, again, the last real sort of defense that this leg has. If not, if this supply is also to fail, okay, we'll likely see some sort of reaction once we close above here. We'll be targeting this inside bar or this wick here, which actually swept the liquidity above there, which I'll map out in just a second, and then essentially taking out this high, hopefully. So this would be the supply, and then we've got this wick. Oh, no, here we go. This supply. And then we can see the sweep above here. Okay, so price could be targeting this high now. We may have to come further back down to get the required liquidity we need to come up to here. Okay, or we can go straight through here. We will definitely have some sort of reaction from this point. And then we could also be closing above this targeted high. So let's wait to see what happens this week on EU. The daily levels remain the same. That's why I didn't change that. I will remove the 4-hour low. So this is the current 4-hour low. This is the current 4-hour high, which we are potentially about to break on Monday or Tuesday. And these are the levels that we're looking to see price trade into. So let's leave that on EU for this week, and let's have a look at how it turns out next week and jump onto GU now. So let's have a look at GU. Thankfully, this outlook also remained as it was. This here was market open on Monday. We can see we actually opened with quite a large and significant gap. All outlooks were pointing to the fact that we should be targeting this level above here. Okay, and we did in fact tap into that. I thought we would need I thought we would be coming into this zone here to take more liquidity below. But looking at this now, as we had already swept the liquidity here, we probably didn't need any more liquidity, and we know that in the sense that once price opened, it had the sufficient liquidity to push it further up. So we did see a very small reaction from this supply zone here as well. We minimize that in the sense of these buy to sell wicks. Okay, and we can see that price actually swept below, pushed up, and then they failed. And once tapping into here, I did suspect that we were going to come into one of these zones. So, however, it was just in the wrong order. So we did tap above before needing to tap back down into this zone, which we tapped into here on Friday. And now we could potentially be seeing if price is going to continue bullish and break this daily and 4-hour high, or if we're going to be coming further down into this low. So let's clean up the charts a bit. We'll get rid of last weekend's outlook. We'll delete those three. We'll see if our 4-hour levels need to change. They don't, because the 4-hour low is all the way down there, and that's very much intact. And the 4-hour high is also still intact. You can see we're stacking quite a little liquidity above these highs here. And I will be doing a video in the future for YouTube as well on those 6 different types of liquidity we look for. So there's liquidity resting here in the sense of trendline liquidity. You can see we've tapped into this. We've had quite a bullish reaction from there. Now let's look at targeted and protected lows. So if we look at this high here, this high's objective was to set a lower low, okay, lower than the swing low at the time, which was here. It's failed to do so. This low, however, has also failed to put in a higher high, higher than this high. So we're sort of stuck between supply and demand at the moment. We don't really know, we don't have a clear sense of direction at the moment. So what we'll do is wait to play a reaction. So what we can see here, we've got this supply, which was tapped into. Okay, we did set a lower low here. Okay, and now we're pushing back up into this. So if we take the wick, because that's technically the next unmitigated supply, you can see we've actually created buy to sell wicks here as well. But again, these are not going to be a valid demand up and until we break above this supply. So if price is to close above this level, that means that this supply has now failed. And this would be the demand that flipped that supply. And that's simply why it's called a flip zone. So we could potentially, if we close above here, we could potentially wait to see how the 15-minute structure and order flow is at the time inside this demand zone. And if it's still in our favor, we could be taking trades into this the daily and 4-hour supply extreme, which has also swept liquidity there. We could potentially be targeting the liquidity above this high. As I said, we're stacking all the liquidity above here. This is the real liquidity pool, which a lot of the traders who have taken trades along this bearish leg are going to have stop losses in here. So we could potentially be targeting that liquidity above, or this supply zone could in fact actually hold, as we haven't yet broken it. This here is a very nice demand zone. We could potentially come down here before continuing up into there, or this demand zone itself could also fail. So let's mark out the demand zone first. Okay, what we could also see is that this supply zone could hold. We could push this into this demand zone. We will have a reaction from this demand zone, and then we could potentially be targeting this one below, because although price is bullish on the 4 hour, we have actually tapped into discount. Yeah, or looks like it might just be a tick or two away, but we do have a lot of zones below, which will still have a lot of liquidity. Whether we target them within the next couple of weeks or whether these are zones that are going to be mitigated in the future is yet to be seen. But however, we will just wait to see if this supply is going to hold or not. If it does hold, we'll see if this demand is going to hold. There's going to be trades to take in either direction as well. So if this supply does hold and the 15-minute structure is bearish, we could potentially be looking for 1 minute shorts from this supply into this demand. If this demand zone holds and 15-minute order flow is bullish, we could be taking longs from here into this supply zone. And once we arrive at these supply zones, we can be taking very short-term shorts as well, because the extremes are always going to be valid. We're also going to be taking a lot of liquidity if we were to sweep this high here. So let's leave this as it is now for GU, and let's have a look at it next week. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you guys are in luck this weekend. You're getting a 2-for-1 deal. So there's going to be another video posted a few hours later than this one. So you can also jump in and watch that one, which will be a full trade breakdown on AU, the pair that I am complete master of. And if you do have any questions about the course, I have been emailing a lot of people who have signed up for the school online. However, I haven't been receiving a lot of replies from them. And I have been told in the past that a lot of my emails are going to people's junk, just because unfortunately Forex is still sort of tagged as a scam a lot of the times with these emails, so they don't actually go to your direct box. So please do check your junk mail, and if it is in there, please mark the sender as safe so that you don't miss any of my future emails. If you have any questions, if you want to jump on a quick one-to-one Zoom so that I can actually show you what the course is all about, show you a couple of the flow charts as well as the Discord, I'm more than happy to do so. So let me know and we'll book in that Zoom session completely free, just so I can show you exactly what you're getting yourself into. So you know from the beginning and I'm setting the right expectations. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. Let's book that in. Let's get chatting. I want to see you succeed, and I will be speaking to you in the next video and then next week in the following outlook. Take care, and I hope you have a great week.